Now, if we look into the motherboard as well, so the motherboard is a hardware device that is used to like connect all that connects all parts of the computer, right? So the motherboard, without the motherboard, the computer becomes useless. So it's like our human brain. Now let's look into what peripheral hardware devices mean. So by the word peripheral, it means chika. So it means outside the computer. So anything that can be plugged in or kept outside the computer, this is what we call as peripheral hardware devices. For example, the printer, the webcam, the speaker, the microphones, all are present outside the computer, right? So these are examples of such hardware devices. And now we said that motherboard components, without it, the computers won't function at all. So what do we mean by CPU? So it's the central processing unit. So it is like the brain of the computer. So it does a lot of calculation, and that's why we're able to use the computer, right? So when we buy a computer, we should be aware of the CPU of the computer. So if the CPU is high, it means that it processes the data very fast as well. And we have a friend of CPU, and we call this as graphics processing unit. So it's a companion. So when we are playing video games, what happens very high, and in order to assist the CPU to able to calculate these graphics, what happens is the GPU helps the CPU. So we can see that these are the two parts or components of the motherboard. So the difference between input and output devices. So input devices, they accept data from the user. So we can say keyboard, it will accept data, which means that it will accept what I write down on the keyboard, right? And the output devices, the screen is to show what I wrote down, right? And as for the input device, we control the input device, whereas the output device, that's the screen monitor, is being controlled by the output device. So and then the input device, it translates the input data into a computer format, whereas the output device will translate the computer format into something that us, the users, the ones using the computer, can understand. And these are some of the examples of input device. We have keyboard, we have the mouse, web camera, we have the microphone, right? And as for the output device, we have the speaker, we have the monitor screen, the printer, and the speakers as well. Now, as for the touch screen, it is a computer display that acts as both input as well as output. Because in a touch screen, we like use the monitor itself to give the input data, and it will give us the output data as well at the same time. So therefore, the touch screen, it acts as both input as well as the output device. So let's skip these questions. Now, what is troubleshooting? So, troubleshooting is basically shooting the trouble, which means basically solving the problem that we face, right? Yes. So, troubleshooting means solving the problem. Okay, so it basically means solving problem. So, if we face any issues with hardware devices, then how do we solve it? So these are the questions that we should ask ourselves when troubleshooting. So is the computer plugged into the socket or not? Or whether the cables are connected or not, or whether the computer is turned on or not. So we are basically looking if the hardware devices are keeping the computer on or not. So we are solving a problem, right? So that process of solving a problem is what we call as troubleshooting. So these are some of the examples of troubleshooting. So is the device turned on? Is the device so something that we focus on the physical, something that we focus on the hardware device, right? In order to solve a problem. So could be such. This could be the examples of the troubleshooting. and you can also play some games and review questions to help with your understanding. So if the computer is not responding, we how do we solve the problem? So we check if the computer is plugged in or not, and if not, we plug in the computer. And if we plug in the computer and the computer is still not responding, then we check if the monitor is being turned on or not. And if it's not turned on, then we turn on the monitor, and we keep on solving these hardware device problems, right? So this is basically what troubleshooting means. It means solving the problem. So we are done with hardware. So it's the physical part of the computer, right? The hardware. Now let's jump into what software means. So um, software. So software, it's something that we cannot touch, right? So it's not a physical part of the computer. So rather, we can simply define software as a instruction, right? It's an instruction that tells a computer what to do. So that would be the definition of software. So it's an instruction that tells the computer what to do. For example, we have software like we I mentioned before, software applications such as Google, YouTube, Gmail, Instagram, etc. And then there are two types of software. We have the system software and the application software. So the system software is the uh, software that works on the hardware of the computer. So it allows us to use the apps in the computer, which means that without the system software, the application software will not work. So the system software, it will manage the processing of the data, and it will also manage the memories. Whereas application software, we use it to perform specific tasks. We use it to do specific tasks, such as if you want to write an essay, or if you want to do something related to writing a story, we can use Google Docs. And that Google Docs is an application, is an example of application software. Now you can see some examples that are given over here. So when we use the computer, we are most likely using application software. And these application softwares are based on the system software. So it's really important to understand this one. Now, the system software, without the system software, the computer will be useless because it manages the computer's memory and processes. So it also manages the hardware and the software, which means that we will not be able to play video games, we will not be able to uh, take pictures, we will not be able to process any data without this system software. Moving on to next, so we have an examples of application software. It could be word processor, it could be web browsers, right? To search various topics. We play video games on the computers. All of these are examples of application software. So what's the difference between these two types of software? So function of the system software is to manage the computer's memory, resources, and process the data. Whereas as for the application, it performs specific tasks, but it is not related to how the computer works because that will be managed by the system software. And the system software will already be installed in your computer or your laptop or a device, so it's a general purpose software. Whereas the application, we can decide whether to install the app, right, in the computer or not. And the system, it directly interacts with the hardware, whereas the application does not directly it does not directly interact with the hardware devices. And the system, it runs continuously, whereas an application, it depends on whether the user, right, we the ones using the computer, we can decide to start the program or end the program as well. For example, we can use an apps like or play video games, and we can decide whether to keep it installed or delete that program. So system, it operates directly on hardware. So these are some of the basic differences, right, of the between system software and application software. One important thing is that the computer will not function without the system software, whereas when it comes to the application software, whether it's present or not, the computer will still function. Now, what is a computer program? So, software and applications, they are developed as a computer program. So, like we mentioned before, uh, software is a set of instructions, right? That tells a computer something to do, or that tells the computer what tasks to perform. So, computer programs. So, us as human beings, we communicate in language, right, like English, Zonka, whereas in case of computer programs, they are written in computer languages, and these languages, they include Java, Python, JavaScript, etc. And these languages are used to make such computer programs. So a set of instructions, like to make a computer program, you need an algorithm. And what do we mean by an algorithm? So it's a step-by-step plan, right? Step-by-step plan or instructions to perform a specific task. For example, if we want to make emadasi, we will need uh, various vegetables. We will need chili, we will need cheese, and we also need to know how to make it, right? So such instructions, similarly, we call it as algorithms. Now, here the monkey is talking about how to make a chocolate and describing about the steps. So these steps to make this hot chocolate are basically instructions. So the computer also follows step-by-step instructions to develop a computer program, right? So this is what we call as an algorithm. So now how does it all interact here? So like to use an example, if we want to write an essay, we can use a Google Doc, right? And the Google Doc here is the application software, and Google Doc will then operate on the system software, and the system software will operate on the hardware, and this is how we are able to our tasks of writing something, right? So all it's all introduced software, and the system software depend tasks. Okay, so algorithm. To explain again on what algorithm means. Okay, that's so when we say algorithm, it's like a recipe. It's like a recipe to perform a specific task. So if we want to make something, right, if you want to make an hot chocolate, we will need, like the monkey says over here, we need to put cocoa in the cup, then add milk. So such step-by-step plan or set of instructions that's required to do a specific task. That's what we call as a algorithm. So for example, if you were to make a Lego construction, right, we will need to know the instructions to how to like combine the specific Lego pieces. So that would be the our algorithm, right, in the case of computer. So computer performs various tasks. So in order to perform those tasks, the computer needs a set of instructions, and that set of instructions is what we call as algorithm. So I hope you understood what algorithm means. Now, the difference between hardware and software. So hardware is something physical and that can be seen and touched, and where software, it's it cannot be directly touched, and we can directly use the software, right? So here the hardware and the software, they depend on each other, which means that hardware cannot perform any tasks without the software, and the software cannot perform any tasks without the hardware. So so there are several differences mentioned over here, but the main difference, right, is that the hardware is something that we something that can be seen and touched, and software is something that cannot be touched and something that the users can interact with directly. So the hardware is developed using materials, right, and electronics like plastic, metal, glass, and it can be repaired in case of problem, and replaced. It hardware can be replaced if it cannot be repaired. So software is a computer program, right? So it can be developed by writing instructions. So by writing algorithms, right, using programming languages like Java, right, Python, etc. And it can be debugged, means that it can be repaired, right, in case of a problem. And if the software fails to function, then we can always install it again. So these are some of the differences between hardware and software. So there's also troubleshooting, which means we can also solve problems related to software issues. So what we do is we find the solution, right, to the errors that's occurring, right, while running the application. So what would be some of the things that you should be trying out if the website, right? For example, we are using the internet right now to connect to the Zoom call, right? So in such cases, you have to check if you face any problems, you have to check if your computer is connected to the internet or not, and you should also try restarting your computer, or you should try using a different browser. In this case, we are using the browser Chrome. We can use Microsoft Edge or other browsers as well, and we can also see if we can reach other websites as well. So these are the example of troubleshooting. So is the caps lock on? Did you close and reopen? So some of the questions that you can ask yourself to solve problems related to software. So we are done with software. So it's something that we cannot that cannot be seen, but we can use it, right? So we can use it to tell what the computer has to do. So that would be under software. Now let's look into memory and storage. So for us human beings, our brain stores our memory, right? And sometimes we do not even remember what we ate in our past meal, right? So similarly, the computer it categorizes memory into short term and long term as well. So what store on computers? We can store documents, videos, pictures, photos, and audio files, right? So the computer, how does the computer store it? So the computers can store it in various ways, and the computer can store it in a binary. Hello, La. Sorry for the internet interruption. So, am I audible, La? Ano? Okay, so like we said, the computer stores information in a binary number system, in uh, each with number either in number 0 or 1, and we call this number as bits, right? So 8 bits make 1 byte. So this is how data is being grouped in a computer. So you may be wondering, how does the computer store data in the form of numbers? Well, the sequence, right, of the bits in the byte can be different. So it can be either 11000. Yeah. Sorry for the. Let me share my screen again. Well, stop sharing screen. Okay. So okay. So you may be wondering how the computer. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So let me start with uh, how, how computer stores the data. So the computer stores the data in a number system, right? So the number system, it collects numbers of one or two, and we call each of these one or two as bytes, as bits, and eight of these bits make up a byte. So um, this is how data is being grouped in a computer, right? So this is basically how the data is being grouped. Now, you may be wondering how the computer, right, stores data in this way, in a binary manner. So the pattern can be different, and that particular pattern of the bytes of the bits, right? So it can be either 11000, or it could be 1001. So there's this different pattern, or we can arrange it differently. So if we can arrange it differently, it will represent different datas, right? So that's how the computer stores information. I hope you're clear with it. So the arrangement or the sequence of ones and zeros can be different. And because it can be different, it can display different data as well. And that is how the computer is able to store the data. Let's skip this question. So memory storage. So like we said, the computer stores memories in bytes, right? So it stores in either kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabytes. So these are some of the conversions that are being present here. Now let's look into the memory storage. We are done with it. So let's skip this question as well. So storage, right? So like I mentioned before, our brain also categorizes uh, whether to keep this memory or whether to retain this memory, right? So it differentiates memory into short-term memory and long-term memory. So similarly, the computer also has this storage system as well. So here, if it's the short-term storage, so in short-term storage, it is the short-term memory is being stored in chips, the computer chips, right, that we mentioned before, known as random access memory. So these short-term information, they are volatile. Volatile means it's temporary. For example, on a heater, if we place a block of ice, that ice will melt, right? Which means that the ice is volatile. So similarly, the information that or the information that's being stored in random access memory will disappear, which means it is temporary. So when you turn off your computer, right? When you turn off your device, that this information in the random access memory will also be gone. But access memory very fast. So therefore, computers usually have high or usually use it for the short-term storage. Now, what is long-term storage? So it we store information on our hard drive. We can also store it in a peripheral device like a flash drive. We can also now when we say peripheral, it means something that is something that's outside the computer, right? Something that we can plug in or attach to the computer. So such device we call it as the peripheral device. So we can use the flash drive to store data, or we can also use the hard drive that's present in the computer to store the data as well. Or with the use of internet, we can store the information in the cloud as well. So the memory that the long-term storage stores is known as the non-volatile, which means that it will stay permanently in the long-term storage. So let's look into the pros and cons of each device that we use to store long-term memory. So we use hard drives, right? So computers will have an internal hard drive to store files. So we can store photos, we can store movies, we can store animes, we can store dramas, right? And we do not need the internet to access these files. So we can just simply go to a hard drive, pick a movie, and just watch it. Whereas negative, it's uh, disadvantage is that it has limited capacity, and if the hard drive crashes, right, because of some defect, what will happen is that the information will also be lost. And flash drives. So you must have seen small portable flash drives, right? To transfer your file to your friend's computer, right? So such devices, they do not they also do not require the internet, and it's useful for transferring files from one computer to another, and is quite portable. However, also has its share of disadvantages. It has a limited capacity and it can hold only limited gigabytes of data. And the cloud. So the cloud has unlimited um, storage, right? But then it requires internet, and it may cost money if we want to increase our storage capacity. And security is less controlled by you, unlike the flash drive and the hard drive. So this uh, uh, this is it for memory and storage, how we store memory in short term and long term memories. Now let's look into the internet. So let's learn about what the internet is. So by the word itself, the internet. So inter means between, right? Inter means between or together. So internet. Wait. Inter means between, and network, so it's short for internetwork. So inter means between, and network means collection of connected computers. So internet is basically communication between connected computers, or we can also define it to be a huge network that connects millions of computers all around the world. Or we can also define it as a big web, right, that connects computers. So it's basically communication between computers, and it uses specific methods for to communicate with each other. And that method we call it as protocols. For example, when we see our friend, right, we give them handshake. So such a protocol or such manners, right? So we use a method. So that method of communication uh, that is used in internet is what we call as protocols. So using the internet, so we internet has incredible applications, right? And we use it as well. So for example, if we were to send an email to our friend, we will require the internet. So we use the internet in such ways. Now, terms related with the internet. So there are quite some interesting terminologies related to internet. So let's look into what internet itself means. So it's, like I said, it's a big web, of a big web that connects computers all over the world. And what does network mean? So network means it's a group of computers that's connected together to share information. So as mentioned over here, it's a group of two or more digital devices connected to share data. For example, if we were to use a computer and connect it to a printer, that's a network. So we are using the computer to print something. So the computer and the printer is connected, right, to share data. So the computer and the printer together form a network. Now, what do we mean by www? That stands for World Wide Web. So it the World Wide Web consists of all the web pages that offer textual and multimedia content that you can view. So the www also uses the internet to be able to share this to be able to share this content. So we can say that it's the part of the internet that holds the websites, right? So you might have seen links, right, with www dot. So that stands for World Wide Web. Now, if you look into, so we can also define it as the part of the internet that holds the websites, right? So what do we mean by websites now? So websites means collection of pages, right? Collection of pages on the internet or collection of data on the internet. And how can we visit these websites? We can use a web browser. So www means a part of the internet that holds websites. So this is what it simply means. Or we can say part of the internet that consists of web pages in order to share content. Now, what do we mean by an IP address? So, to give a unique identity to digital devices, we assign IP address to the digital devices. So that's it's in the form of a number that's being separated by periods, right? You can see over here an example of IP address. So, like each of our home address, right, each of our home has different home address. The digital device also has its own unique numbers, and that numbers is what we call as the IP address. So if we continue, uh, there are some internet terms as well. So bandwidth. So bandwidth means how how, how much data move to a network in time. Share screen name. Um, So if you have any doubts about what I taught right now, please do submit your questions in the document provided in the WhatsApp group. Lah. So bandwidth, to explain what bandwidth means. Bandwidth means how much data can move through a network at one time. For example, we can compare it to a pipe, right? So um, pipe is thick, then the water can travel more. So similarly, if the bandwidth, right, in a network. So what do we mean by server now? So server is a special computer, okay, that stores websites or that hosts websites that others or that users can access. For example, in order to use this the CodeMonkey's website, it has a server, and that server would be the CodeMonkey server. So the CodeMonkey server allows us to access the CodeMonkey website as well. So now let's look into the other term over here. So URL. So URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So it's a user-friendly name for the IP address to a web page. So we said that there's a unique number given to a website, right? That's what we call as the IP address. But then we cannot necessarily memorize the numbers, right? But URL is user friendly, which means that we can easily memorize this URL, that stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So for example, if you want to like search for google.com, if you want to search for Google, we can just simply type www.google.com. So that would be an example of Uniform Resource Locator. Now, URLs make the internet more user friendly because we need not, like the monkey asked over here, uh, uh, if we were to remember the IP address, we would have to remember the long number separated by the periods. That's going to be hard for us, right? So it's better to remember the URL that's user friendly for us. Okay, so internet terms, web browser. So what do we mean by web browsers? So it's a program that we use to visit websites. So the one that I'm using right now would be Chrome. So there are some other examples such as Safari, Microsoft Edge as well. Then we have search engines. So search engine is a software application. Okay, so it's a software application that we can use to find information on the internet, or we can use to access other websites as well. So examples of this search engine would be Google, Bing, Yahoo, and all. For example, we can go to the search engine Google and search about the population of Bhutan and all. So basically, it's a software application that we use to find information on the internet. Then we have the ISP, that stands for Internet Service Provider. So internet service provider, they are connected to our home, school, and they are connected to a home and school uh, via cable. So we use cables to connect this internet service provider, and then this routers, and then it's connected to the router, right? And then the internet thus becomes wireless. But then the internet service provider itself is not wireless because it's being connected to our homes, school, right, and routers as well. So internet service provider are simply companies that help connect our home, right, school, business computers to the global internet. And then we have the routers. So routers are devices that connect your computer to the internet service provider. So it acts like a bridge between our computers and the internet service provider and the rest of the internet. So like I mentioned before, most routers can connect to your computer wirelessly, but the internet service provider must connect your home or school through actual wires and cables. This is what router means. So this is what router means.
Hello everyone. Machi going. You are audible to you all. Yes. Sorry, our internet is quite fluctuated here. Dari amchi bijagi tukka. We will continue next day after tomorrow. Ani beodalu dari zonira bi ani tatugi slide. We will continue the day after tomorrow. Ani slide di already in CodeMonkey na yi tatu chisulu assign mabi bongba teachers disuki. So could you ask your teacher to assign this course digital use la make course to you? So you can you request your teacher and ask them to assign that course to you. 아니 비비드 추기 아니 다또 때문에 스카라 톤주 하고이. You can ask your teachers to assign this particular courses digital use because I need the class that have the miba, so you can request your teacher to assign this course. 아니 비비드로 so you can access all the resources that we presented here. 똑까. So another question halamchira did if you have still doubt, don't know, write in the Google Docs. I will share in the Telegram as well. Analuchi write betuko. We will explain in the next session. Hagui. There is the time is also no unbending. Bishagi. So write in the docs document. Hagui ka. Tele ani the chi and play and review question this tumo. So and this review betuko chesugi. First ask your teachers to assign the course to you, then you can go through those courses. Hagui. Okay, namchira mitari. Thank you for joining with us and see you tomorrow. Nabadi ngaji coding te ka. Okay, thank you.